Welcome to More Living with Jim Brogan, your source of information for living the best years of your life your way. For more than a decade, host Jim Brogan and his expert guests have come together each week to share important news and advice that can impact the lives and well-being of those who are retired and those nearing retirement. Learn about issues like health and fitness, financial planning, Social Security benefits, investment advice, and more. And now, here's the host of More Living, Jim Brogan.
Good morning, East Tennessee, and welcome to More Living with Jim Brogan, where it's all about living the best years of your life your way. I want to ask you a very important question. Can you retire a lot sooner than you think? Well, the answer is yes. This is true for many of you listening to the show right now. And it could be much easier than you think. You know, you could be closer. You know, some of you may be already ready to cross the finish line or to put the ball in the end zone, whatever sports analogy you want to use, but you're there, you just don't realize it. What's standing between you and living the life you've always dreamed of? What steps do you need to take now that could turn your retirement into a reality? The answer is not necessarily that you simply need to save more money. The answer lies in a few things, but it's what you do with the money that you saved and invested for retirement, and it's having a written plan. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have a written plan. Because when you have or just having a comprehensive plan, because what happens is when you have a plan, and you know it's built on science and research, built on study, you know, not just, I think this might work, but it's built and it's reasoned well, and you understand the plan, then you have the tools in place to not only be successful, but be confident in your ability to retire successfully. So coming up on today's show, I want to cover 4 specific steps that could help you maybe retire sooner than you thought was realistic, including things like how you can save taxes on your 401k and IRA benefits and your Social Security benefits. Talk about successful strategies to taking your life savings and turning it into income in retirement. Plus the key to asset allocation and diversification, and where most get asset allocation dead wrong, especially when we consider the environment that we're in right now. And what does all that mean? We're going to get into all that today. Let's dive right in. Number 1, turn your investments into an income workhorse in retirement. You know, we do not retire on assets. We retire on income. It's the ability to take your assets and convert them into dependable, increasing income that lasts longer than you do. That's the key. You know, you've heard me say it before, but for most people, the plan that gets you to retirement is not the plan that will get you through retirement, because there's a whole different set of pressures and stresses that are on the nest egg. And let's look at the reality that we face in today's world. The percentage of employers who still offer a traditional defined benefit plan. A defined benefit plan is where you get a pension benefit. You know, a monthly check for life. The percentage of companies that do that to new employees today is now 5%. That was in 2015, down from 50% in 1998. So you don't have that regular income to be able to depend on. Now, Social Security pays regular income, and that's actually going to be one of my tips I'll talk about a little bit later, is maximizing that. But more and more retirees now have to depend more and more on their own life savings to produce that dependable increasing income. And then there's a lot of challenges to doing that today, more than ever. I mean, for the first time the only time in our U.S. history, since 1900 anyway, in the modern stock market era, stocks are expensive and bonds are expensive. So that creates some challenges. First, let's look at the stock market. Stocks are expensive. You know, under any valuation you use, there are different ways to evaluate the stock market, and is it expensive or is it cheap? There's
PE ratios, and there's actually several ways to measure PE ratios, purely historic earnings versus future expected earnings. But there's different ways to measure that. We could also look at the market capitalization. What are all the U.S. companies worth if you look at their stock market value and compare that to our gross domestic product? So market cap to GDP. I don't want to get too specific, too into the weeds today. But the bottom line is, no matter how we look at it, stocks are expensive today. They should be more expensive than the average because interest rates are so low. And they are still low. You can still get a 30-year mortgage at 4.5%. Think back 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, those of you that grew up in the 30s or 40s or even in the 50s, or even in the 60s. I mean, look at what interest rates are now compared to then, even with some increases over the last couple of years. So when interest rates are down, that makes bonds less expensive, or less attractive, CDs less attractive, so people go to stocks. And they should be higher than average, but they're high. And then bonds are also high. Remember, interest rates and traditional bonds move in an opposite direction. So when interest rates are low, bonds go high. When interest rates rise, bonds go down. Well, interest rates historically are still low. And so what that means is the traditional investing that you see with stocks and traditional U.S. bonds, I mean, they're both expensive. It's hard to imagine or predict that we'd have a boom in either of those asset classes over the next 10 years. That doesn't mean you should not invest in those asset classes. It's just, it'd be unrealistic to expect 10, 12, 14% per year. It'd just be unrealistic. So it creates a challenge on taking your money and then positioning it to be able to draw stable, increasing income for life. So how do you go about doing that? There's a lot of ways, and there are a lot of things we need to talk about today. I'm going to get in them in all four of these points, but I'm going to hit a couple right now. One, and maybe the most overlooked area in retirement planning today, is how you structure your income plan. How much income can you draw from your savings, and where do you draw it from? So to use a simple example, you have $1 million. You need to draw an extra 30, 35, maybe 40,000 a year to supplement any other income you have, like Social Security. Maybe you have a pension, maybe you have rental real estate, but whatever it is, you need to then draw out an extra, say you got $1 million, you got to draw out 35,000 a year in today's dollars. That's a 3.5% distribution rate. You may have heard of the 4% rule. Hey, take 4% out in year one and then increase that over time. That may not work real well. I'm going to cover that more in one of my other points when it comes to asset allocation. But here's the thing. Your income plan is more not only how much you draw, but where do you draw it from? And the biggest thing I can impress upon you this morning is that you shouldn't be drawing income from investments that are going up and down in value every day and every month and every year, because inevitably they're going to be down at some point. And that means when they're down, you're spending that money as income. So you're selling off investments, and then you're spending the money. So that means when the markets are down substantially, you're having to sell off investments when they're down, and you're having to spend the money. And so then it'll never, ever come back because you've spent it. So you'll compound your losses when the markets are down. And that can be catastrophic in the early years of retirement. It's okay to sell something when it's down and reinvest, but you don't want to sell when it's down and spend the money. It's kind of Wealth Management 101, don't spend investment losses, which means don't sell them when they're down and spend the money. So you've got to structure your money where when we have the big downturns, you're not depending on those risk investments. So I'm a big fan of, if you just think of creating two different buckets of money, just think of them as different buckets. One bucket is your safe and stable investments. In other words, that money's not going up and down with the stock market, and you can depend on it being there if you need money. It's there for you. It's not going to grow as much. It has risk. I'm calling it safe money. It does have risk. It has inflationary risk. But then the risk money is the growth, long-term growth, and it can make a lot of money, but can lose a lot of money. You need a plan so that in the early years of retirement especially, you can be living on safe money assets, stable investments that they're there when you need them. So if we go through a big downturn in the market in the first year of retirement or the first 3 years of retirement or right before retirement, it doesn't affect you as much because you're not depending on that money to retire successfully. And I cannot impress how important that is. Now, then you've got to know how to do the safe money, and you've also got to know how to do the risk money. But you've got to start with securing that income in the shorter term. Successful retirements are not built on how much you have saved for retirement. They're not built on some magic number that they talk about on TV and commercials. They are built on your ability to generate dependable, increasing income. And if you don't have a specific plan to generate income from diversified sources that are more stable in the short term, it is maybe the fastest way you could run through your life savings far too soon. The good news is there are great options for all of this, and I can show you how to turn your savings into an income workhorse. This is what I talk about in my college classes. Okay, and I've got my next class upcoming at the Blount County campus of Pellissippi State. If you go to PellissippiRetirementPlanning.com, I'm going to be at the Louisville, the Blount County campus on March the 26th and April the 2nd. Go to PellissippiRetirementPlanning.com. You can get more information. Income planning is one of 7 main things that I get into in that class, and it's one of the biggest, maybe it's just as big, that one in asset investments, asset allocation. I would urge you to do that. If you can't go out to Blount County, I'm going to be back at the University of Tennessee downtown in May. And you can go to BroganFinancial.com. If you'll scroll down, you can see my upcoming class schedule. It's 2 2-hour sessions, adult education, non-credit. I cover as much stuff as I can. If you're near retirement or already retired, the class is focused for you. It's only $59. There's a spousal discount, both at Pellissippi and UT. I would love to see you there. Income planning is one of the biggest things I talk about in that class, but there are 6 other very, very important things. Now, there are 2,728 rules in the Social Security Handbook, and there are literally hundreds of thousands of rules about those rules. So coming up next, I'll show you how to simplify the Social Security decision and get more out of your benefits. You're listening to More Living with Jim Brogan, only on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
You are listening to More Living with Jim Brogan. During the week, Jim is a financial advisor, an author and speaker with an MBA from the University of Tennessee, who specializes in helping people in or near retirement plan for the next phase of their lives. You can reach Brogan Financial during the week at 865-862-6800 or on the web at broganfinancial.com. And now, here's Senior Market Advisor Magazine's 2011 National Advisor of the Year and host of More Living, Jim Brogan.
What is the most important election you will vote on in retirement? It is your Social Security election. Welcome back to More Living. This is News Talk 98.7 WOKI. I'm your host, Jim Brogan, and your Social Security election will be in the foundation of your financial game plan. The choices you make here could have a domino effect on many other things other than just your Social Security income. It could affect extra or less taxation. It could impact, maybe even double your Medicare premiums. You could end up forfeiting thousands of dollars in spousal benefits. What about widow benefits? How does that affect your decision? We're not talking about small amounts of money here. We're talking about tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. So today, we're talking about 4 specific steps that you can take that may allow you to retire much sooner than you thought ever possible. Maybe even you could retire now. So in this segment, we'll talk about why claiming your Social Security benefits may be a much bigger deal than you realize, plus the strategies that can help get you more money out of what your benefits are and what you're entitled to. You know, Forbes magazine states that millions of Social Security recipients are not getting what they're entitled to. In fact, as much as $10 billion, with a B, $10 billion in benefits goes unclaimed every year. There are 2,728 rules in the Social Security Handbook. And there are literally hundreds of thousands of rules about those 2,728 rules. So today, obviously can't cover all this in one segment, but I'm going to cover the biggest issues I think you need to talk about or be thinking about. So let's just talk about Social Security basics. You know, you can draw as early as age 62. You can delay as late as age 70. And when you delay, your benefits increase. You get a higher benefit when you delay. Now, full retirement age, the age at which you're eligible for your full Social Security benefit, no matter what your income is, no matter if you're married or not, your full retirement age benefit is going to be between age 66 and 67. If you're born before 1955, it's 66. But between 1955 and 59, it's going to start graduating closer to 67 in 2 months every year. And then if you're born in 1960 or later, it's going to be 67. But you can draw early or you could delay. Bottom line, the increase in benefit from age 62 to age 70 is over 75% of an increased benefit. So let me put that in. Think about it. If you're benefited age 62, let's use round numbers. If it's $2,000 a month, at age 70, it's going to be over $3,500 a month. That is a profound increase in your Social Security benefit. We also know that people are living longer and longer lives. You know, when you retire, if you retire at age 65 and you're a female, your single life expectancy is to live to 92, believe it or not. A male is age 89. And a married couple, you know, two people, the joint life expectancy is longer. If you're married at 65, it's likely one of you, the average, would live to 29 years, 94 years old. We've got to worry about what our income is going to look like when we're 88 or when we're 90. So, you know, it may sound like, as I talk about this, it may sound like, hey, delay the benefit, delay. You be careful, caution. I'm hearing that a lot. I'm hearing it. I'm seeing it online. I'm hearing it on radio, TV, experts, non-experts. I'm hearing it all the time. Delay, if you can, delay, because you get this increased benefit and you may live a long life. And you know, that makes sense on the surface. There's a lot more to it than that. Let's talk about a couple of the other issues. Number one, can you afford to delay your benefit? You know, if let's say you retire at 65 and you say, well, you know, I'm going to get these big increases. I'm going to wait till 70. Well, but if you need the income, that means you're going to have to draw more from your life savings. What if you retire 62? And you say, well, I want to delay. I want to get that 76, 77% increase in my benefit, but I need the income, so now you're going to take it from your savings. Well, how much do you end up gutting your savings so that you can delay your benefit to 70? You might get to 70, and yeah, you've got a much greater Social Security benefit, but you've gutted your savings. And you know what? If you end up gutting your savings in the first 5 to 10 years of retirement, you could end up being cooked, because over 80% of your eventual outcome in retirement is determined in the first 10 years. I mean, it's done. So if you gut your savings in those first 10 years because you delayed your Social Security benefit, you could end up being cooked. And you just don't have enough money to be able to sustain if you live to be 90, 80, or even 85, much less 90 or 95. So can you afford to delay the benefit? So, you know, there's these Social Security calculators that look at all this, but they just look at the Social Security benefit itself. When's the break-even point? You know, usually it's in the early 80s. People are living longer lives. Oh, you should living longer lives, so you should delay. The problem is we don't know how you're going to end up gutting your savings. That's got to be a big part of the equation. Can you afford to delay? Number one. Then there's other key things to this equation. What do spousal benefits look like? See, the lower earning spouse is going to get the greater of his or her own benefit or 1/2 of your spouse's benefit. So like my wife, she works primarily in the home, maybe one of the most important jobs in America. She's grossly underpaid. Now, she does work. She actually works in my office with me. She's a big part of our strategic planning management team. But she works, it's part-time for her. She does a lot of other things that she doesn't get paid for. So her earnings base is going to be, not as substantial. So she's going to get half of my benefit. Now, I have to be drawing for her to get that half, but she's going to get half of my benefit as long as I'm drawing. Well, there's the rub. The spousal benefit stops increasing at full retirement age. It never goes up anymore. So if your spouse turns 66 and is full retirement age, but you're wanting to delay to 70, well, your spouse can't get the spousal benefit. They have to wait until you're drawing. Well, that could affect your decision, right? Because he or she's not getting any increase in the benefit from 66 to 70. So that affects the decision. Also, widow benefits. When one spouse dies, the surviving spouse gets the higher of the two benefits. Well, we don't know when people are going to die, but one of the things to kind of keep in mind, like if I delay my benefit to 70, and let's say that my wife draws early, so then her benefit's discounted for life. Well, not really, because if I die first, she steps up to my full benefit. See, once if I die first, it no longer matters that she drew early. She gets the benefit of me waiting because she's going to step up to the full benefit. So see, spousal and widow benefits are a big deal. And by the way, if you were married for at least 10 years and then you got a divorce, you get the same benefits as if you're married on spousal and widow benefits. But you have to bring it to Social Security's attention. Some people know to do that for spousal benefits, but then what about when your ex-spouse dies? That's a big potential benefit for you. You've got to know to pursue those things, but that affects your Social Security strategy. If you remarry, you no longer have all that flexibility. You attach to the new spouse. So, there could be issues. You're going to remarry. When do you remarry? Or when do you, those things are important. If you're a widow or widower, if you remarry after age 60, then you get to still keep your widow benefit. But if you remarry at 59, you don't get to keep your new widow benefit. You have to attach to your new spouse. So look at all, just in this 4 or 5 minutes, look at all the things I've talked about. So here's the underlying thing is every decision on Social Security election, every person or couple is completely unique to everyone else. It doesn't matter what your neighbor did or your coworker or what somebody said, this is the way you should do Social Security. It has to have a customized analysis based on your personal situation. Can you afford to delay? What do spousal benefits look like? What do widow benefits look like? There are overlooked spousal benefits you can draw maybe at 66 that are free. There are all kinds of things that impact these decisions. So you've got to do a full analysis of how much money you have and how might these different strategies play out under one scenario or another. So there's no one size fits all. I mean, you can imagine if there's over 2,700 different combinations and different rules, there's no one size fits all. It takes a customized analysis. Now, this is also one of the key things I talk about in my upcoming class. It's at Pellissippi State Blount County campus out in Louisville on March 26th and April 2nd. And then if you can't get out that far, I'm back in downtown Knoxville at the Downtown Conference Center for the University of Tennessee on May the 9th and 16th. You can get all of these dates at broganfinancial.com. Scroll down, you can see my upcoming class schedule where I cover 7 main topics. Social Security is certainly a big one. You've got to understand these rules, okay? And I don't hold back. I cover as much as I can. It's 2-hour sessions. If you're retired or you're getting ready to retire, these classes are for you. Go to broganfinancial.com and scroll down to see these classes that are put on by Pellissippi State and the University of Tennessee. I have the privilege to be able to show up and teach that class, and I love to do it. Now, coming up, what is the single greatest expense you and I will ever have in our lifetimes, and how do you reduce that expense in retirement? Stay tuned. You're listening to More Living with Jim Brogan, only on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
his weekly radio show, television news appearances, and adult education classes taught at the University of Tennessee and Pellissippi State Community College, Jim taps into his extensive knowledge and experience to address issues important to living your best retirement. Join Jim every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. here on Newstalk 98.7 WOKI and visit him online at BroganFinancial.com. And now, here's the host of More Living, Jim Brogan.
Welcome back to More Living with Jim Brogan, where it's all about living the best years of your life your way. You're listening to News Talk 98.7 WOKI. What is the single greatest experience you and I will ever have in our lifetimes? For most of us, there's no question it's our income taxes. For most people, I'm talking about taxes on IRA, 401k distributions and retirement accounts, taxes on Social Security benefits, taxes on investment income. When we're working all this taxes on our earned income, it's far and away the greatest expense. But I've got good news. You have more control over your taxation in retirement than at any other time in your life for most retirees. It is a tremendous opportunity. You know, today we're talking about 4 specific strategies that maybe can help you retire much sooner than you thought, maybe even right away. And I will tell you, if you find out you can retire right away, you may end up deciding to work a little bit longer. You may not, but you may find it's refreshing to go into work and know, you know what, I could turn in my notice if I need to or if I want to. I could just say no more. I have found with our clients, it's so revealing for people that they find they want to work longer because they know if they wanted to on those really, really bad weeks, they could just go ahead and retire. But today we're talking about how you can get your affairs in order so that you can do that. Because many of you listening this morning, you could do it even though you don't think you can. And it's about having a plan that you understand, that's built on science and research, that makes sense. That's not just something you made up. Oh, I think this sounds good or not. But it's based on science, and it is proven to work in the past. We know nothing's proven in the future, but it gives you the greatest likelihood for retirement success, and you understand the plan. I can't tell you enough, when you understand your plan and it's communicated in plain English, like I'm trying to do on this show, and when I teach classes, and when I do retirement minutes and all those things, it's so you can understand at least a 30,000-foot view level, so then you can have confidence to retire and live and not worry about the money all the time. In this segment, we're going to talk about income taxes. It is the greatest expense most of us will ever have, and it's not even close. Usually when I ask that question, I usually get, my mortgage, my health care. And those are big ticket items, don't get me wrong, but they pale in comparison to the income taxes we pay. Now, earlier, if you weren't tuned in earlier, I talked about the challenging investment environment we're in when I talked about income planning, that in the, stocks and bonds are both very expensive right now. And we've never had a market like this since 1900. Where both stocks and bonds are expensive. And what that means is we have to adjust our expectations on investment returns over the last 10 years. Well, one way we can really make a big impact is by lowering our income tax bill and bolstering our after-tax return on our investments and on the income that we draw. Because when we do that, we get, it's not how much you make, it's how much you get to keep. So if we can't make quite as much, we can be more effective with that tax bill. So it becomes more and more important, if I'm right, in the next 10 years is a challenging investment environment. Don't misread me. I'm not sitting here and saying the world's falling apart. I'm saying, 8 to 10% a year in the stock market is not a realistic expectation, in my opinion, over the next 10 years. And I may be wrong, but if I'm right, what is your plan to mitigate the risk? And reducing income taxes is one of the best ways to do that. So we have to have a basic understanding of things. So first, I want to talk about the difference in your IRA and 401k type money and all the other money that you have invested. The IRA 401k type money, and when I say IRA or 401k type, I'm referring to any kind of qualified
retirement plan where you or your employer set money aside. And then as that money's aside and growing, you're not being taxed on it. And usually when you put the money in, you're not taxed either. It's a tax deduction up front. So it's IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, and tax-sheltered annuities, 457s, 401as, thrift savings plan if you work for the government. It's a whole alphabet soup. Well, basically, you've never paid income tax on most, if not all, of that money. Everything except for the Roth. The Roth is completely different. Everything except for that. You've never paid income tax on most, if not all, of that money. So what do you think you have to... You're building this big pot of money that you don't really own it all. You have a partner, and your partner is Uncle Sam. So when you pull the money out, you've got to pay off Uncle Sam. And the way that works is you get a 1099 and it's taxed as ordinary income. Doesn't matter how the growth generated. Doesn't matter if it was long-term gains, capital gains. When you pull it out, it's ordinary income. Okay? So you got to pay the income tax. So when you pull that money as income, it's fully taxable. If you go to your non-IRA money, it's not taxable. If you go down to the bank and you pull out $10,000, you've already paid that money on the tax at the bank. So where you go to supplement your income has a tremendous impact on your tax return, and you have the choice of where you go to do that as long as you have both of those kinds of money. I do meet with even high net worth clients that have most of their money in retirement accounts. They have very little non-retirement account money, and if that's the case, you just don't have as much flexibility. But most people do have pots of both, so you have a big impact on where you pull your money from and how that impacts your tax return. Likewise, how do you invest your money that's not in a retirement account? Because if it's not in a retirement account, you get a 1099 every single year on interest and dividends, and if they're capital gains distributions, if you have mutual funds. And it's problematic. You have a choice on how you invest that money, and it has a big impact on your tax return. So there is this sweet spot for many retirees between retirement age and age 70 and a half. The reason age 70 and a half is that's the time, as many of you know, that the IRS is going to force you to start taking money out of your retirement account, your IRA, your 401k, whatever, and you have to be taxed. So you don't have to do that when you're in your 60s. So if you're not working anymore, you have the ability to structure income and investments in a way to keep your tax bracket very, very low. And that creates a lot of side benefits and planning opportunities. Tax planning is looking forward into the future and saying, how much tax do I pay today and how much tax might I pay tomorrow? And there are big opportunities there. You know, it's not tax preparation that we do this time of year where we look backwards and we're doing our tax returns. It's looking forward. So if you're controlling where you pull your income from and you're controlling how you generate investment income and how it's taxed, you control all that. So it's why I say you have so much control over it in retirement. You then have opportunities. If you can keep yourself in a 10 or 12% income tax bracket, guess what your long-term capital gains tax rate is? 0. That is a tremendous opportunity to realize long-term capital gains at 0% tax. We should be taking advantage of that. And you may say, well, Jim, I got a lot of money. You know, I can't do. Yes, you might can. I mean, I know a lot of high net worth people that if they wanted could live in a 10% tax bracket in their 60s in this sweet spot. But hey, let's be smart about that. We can fill up and we can fill up those brackets with long-term gains at 0%. Or maybe we do some Roth conversion planning where, hey, I can convert today at 12%, and I know down the road when I'm at 70 and a half, and after 2025, when the new tax rates expire, I'm going to be at 25%. Or maybe you could do it today at 24%, and you know at 70 and a half, if you have big accounts in your retirement accounts, big balances, you know you're going to be at 33%. Well, maybe you should pay tax at 24 today to not have to pay at 33 tomorrow. That's effective tax planning and taking advantage of these long-term capital gains. There's other things like, what if you have a large capital loss? You sold a piece of property or you sold a stock, or maybe you made a poor investment that went bankrupt, and you've got this large loss on your tax return and you can't use it up because you know ordinary income, you cannot offset losses, capital losses. But now you can intentionally create an investment plan to realize capital gains along the way at 0% because you can use up those loss carry forwards. So there are so many things we can do. So I would urge you, your income tax, your tax plan is such a critical component to your financial plan, especially in this challenging investment environment. You may wonder, how do other people get away with paying fewer taxes even when they might have a good bit of money? Learn how to save thousands of dollars in taxes. It's one of the core things I teach at my college class. My next one is at Pellissippi State on March the 26th and April the 2nd at Blount County. My next one at in Knoxville is at the University of Tennessee, May the 9th and 16th. If you're retired or getting near retirement, this is one of the critical areas that I cover. You can go online to broganfinancial.com, scroll down, and you can find both of those classes right there. You can click to learn more, and you can click to register. They do have spousal discounts. So one of my favorite things, I'll be honest, these colleges put these classes on. I've been fortunate enough to be able to be the person that they bring in to teach these two classes, and I absolutely love it, just like I teach on the radio. I would love to have you come. I'm going to cover all 7 topics. Again, go to broganfinancial.com and scroll down to see the upcoming schedule. Now, as you invest your risk investments, your market investments, what is the single greatest way to hedge the big market downturns? We don't know when the next bear market is coming. We just know it's coming at some point. What's the best way to hedge that and not have it be devastating, especially in the early years of retirement? That's what I'm going to cover in the 4th segment. So don't go away as you listen to More Living right here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. You're listening to More Living this morning here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. I'm your host, Jim Brogan, and today we're talking about 4 specific steps that may help you retire much sooner than you thought possible, maybe even now. In this last segment, what is the greatest hedge against losing a lot of money in the market in the next bear market and other risks you face to your market type investments? So, investing, and really not just risk money, but safe money too. Investing is all about balancing risk and reward. Nobody wants to lose money, but we all want to make money. But I have found that how much we want to try to make is very much a function of how much are we willing to lose, especially in those early years of retirement. And so, the single greatest risk that's ever existed, and it's unquestionable, against losing a lot of money on a market portfolio is time. T-I-M-E, time. Think about it. If you're 35 years old and you've got 30 years till you retire, what do you care if we have a bear market next year on your 401k? I mean, you'll just be trying to figure out, how can I add more money in if you're not already maxing it out or just investing more money? We don't worry about, time. We have time on our side. Time has always worked when we have 30, 40, 50 years. But when we get down to 10 or less years or even 15 or less years, time doesn't always work out as well. And I don't have time today to get into all those examples in market history, but time still is the greatest hedge. The problem is when we retire, we don't have time on our side anymore. We need income now. Or if you're retiring in 2 or 3 years, you need income in 2 or 3 years. You've got to start pulling from your investments. So a big market downturn next year, if you're going to retire in 2 years, think how much that would impact you. How do we build time into our financial plan? We can do that. And the way we do it is by structuring our at-risk investments where we're not going to need them for at least 5 years. And that means we have stable investments that we can depend on and pull from when we have a bear market. That's how we build time into an investment plan. It's the single greatest risk. Now then, we still need more balance in our risk bucket. And I'll tell you right now, and I'm almost out of time, unfortunately, but that traditional 60-40 mix where you have 60% in stocks or stock mutual fund and 40% in U.S. bonds, that is simply not going to work, in my opinion, over the next 10 or 15 years. And if that is your investment plan for your investments, that's just not going to work. You've got to have more balance and more diversification. We'll talk about more of that on a future show. Unfortunately, I'm out of time. Thank you for tuning in today as you've been listening to More Living with Jim Brogan right here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.